and I'm assigning 3.14 to y. So hello everyone, welcome to this course. In this course, we are going to have an introduction to numeric data types in Python. So the first one that we would like to talk about is an integer. So an integer means a whole number with no decimal points. It means, for example, number 1, number 10, number 20. Any numbers with no decimal point, they are integers. Secondly, we would like to talk about float numbers, numbers with decimals, and they can represent fractions. For example, 3.14 or 5.20. These numbers are float numbers. In order to declare numbers and assign them to a variable in Python, we simply write down the name of the variable, an equals sign, and then we are assigning a number to that variable. So for example, here I am initializing a variable called x, and I'm assigning number 10 to this x variable. And here also I am initializing one variable called y, and I'm assigning 3.14 to y. So based on our definition of integers and floats, we understand that x is an integer variable because an integer value is assigned to it, and y is a float variable because a float variable value is assigned to it. By the way, if we want to comment something in Python, we need to have this pound sign before that. For example, when I am writing something after the pound sign, for example, hello from Python, and because we are having a pound sign here before that, it means that it's a comment. So compiler is not going to understand and read these parts. These parts are mainly provided between developers. So if I am developing a code for myself, I can have these comments throughout the code in order for me to have a better understanding of this code. For example, after 2 years, when I come back to my code, I may not remember all the details, but by writing down comments, I can read the comments and it helps me to understand the code better. And also, if I want to, for example, pass this code to another developer, that developer can understand my code better if I'm having some comments in the code. So all these parts that are shown in green are comments, and compiler has nothing to do with them. However, the rest of the code, as you see here, are shown with different colors, and therefore compiler is treating them as something to work with. So here I am initializing one x variable equals to 10 and one y variable equals to 3.14. However, if I would like to see these variables in the output, I can simply print them. So let me comment these parts. So when I type down the print keyword and I type down the x, and when I compile, I see in the output that number 10 is being printed out in the output. So basically, I'm telling the compiler to print the variable x value for me in the output, and it is showing me the variable value. And if I want to print y, I type down the keyword, and within parentheses, I'm typing down the data type, the name of the variable, sorry, and it is going to print that. So when I compile again, I see 10 and 3.14, which are the values for x and y respectively. But when I see this, maybe it would be nice to have some explanation. So now I comment these two lines using a pound sign, and I uncomment this part by printing out by removing the pound sign. And in order for me to have a better understanding of my output, because I may have the print sign for 10 lines, so I would like to have something to be printed out before the variable value, so I can easily recognize which number represents which variable. So I'm adding a comment here. For example, I'm typing down the print keyword, and within parentheses, I have two parts and they are separated by a comma. In the first part, in the code, I'm having x equals, and then in the second part, I'm typing down the name of my variable, which is x, and I'm in the second line, I'm having y equals, and separated by a comma from the second part in the parentheses, which is the name of the variable that I would like to print. So when I run this code, you see this time it prints for me x equals and then 10, y equals 3.14. So when I have, for example, 100 lines to be printed, I don't have to remember, okay, 10 was the number of which variable, so I need to go back to in the code and check, etc. Instead of that, I can simply print this text in the terminal, so I understand 10 is the value that represents variable x, and also y equals 3.14. So in this video, we learned about integers and float data types in Python, and we learned how to print them in the output. And also we learned how to comment some parts that compiler has nothing to do with them. For example, now the compiler is not printing this part because there is a pound sign behind that. But if I uncomment this part and I compile, I see 10. Let me go up a bit. Okay, I see 10. Then I see x equals 10, y equals 3.14. So this is being printed, which is this 10 number, because it is printing x, and x is equal to 10. Sorry, I went up too much. And then I'm having this line being printed out, and then this line being printed out. But this line is not being printed out because there is a pound sign there. So if I remove the pound sign and I compile, I see that now I see that 3.14 is now being also printed out in the output. Thank you for watching. In the next videos, we are going to have some coding exercises with respect to initializing and declaring integer variables and float variables. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we are going to talk about strings. So a string is a sequence of characters enclosed in quotes. A string can include letters, numbers, symbols, or spaces. So in order to initialize one string, I am giving it a name r equals, and in quotes, I'm having the string that I want. It is, for example, in this case, Reza Shahin. So a variable r is assigned a string, and this string is Reza Shahin. I can have another string, for example, it could be hello world. So this is my second string, and I can also print x for myself. So when I run the code, I see that first I'm printing the string r, which is Reza Shahin, and then I'm printing x variable, which is another string, and it is hello world, and hello world is being printed out here. As you see, also the space between these two words are included. So basically, whatever that is included between the quotes is going to be considered in the string. So this is how we declare and we print out one string in Python. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. In today's video, we are going to work with type checking. So we can have different types of variables, for example, integers or floats. In this case, I'm declaring x equals 10, y equals to 3.14. But however, what would happen if I want to know exactly their type to be explicitly mentioned in the output? To do that, we need to use the type function. Okay, so in order to know the data type of x and data type of y, I'm going to use the print keyword, and within parentheses, I'm going to use the type function. Type, we use the type keyword, and then I'm having the variable in the parentheses that I want to know the type of. So here, when I run the code, we see that class int and class float is being printed here. It means that the first one is, which is x, is an integer, and the second one, which is y, is a float data type. So basically, we used to use the print function like this. So it was going to print out the x for us. Okay. So now I'm using this function, type function, to know the type of my variable. And which variable? Okay, I want to know the type of x variable, or I want to know the type of y variable. Okay, this is how we can ask the compiler to give us the variable type of different variables. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we are going to again talk about type conversion. Previously, we learned that we can use, for example, int function or float function to convert any other types of variables to an integer or to a float. Here, I'm printing out the variables like this. So I'm having the print keyword, and within parentheses, I'm having float 5. Within parentheses, I'm having 5. So I would like number 5 to be printed out as a float number. And also, I would like to print out the value 3.14 to be printed out as an integer. So when I run this code, I see this output. So number 5 is being printed out like this, like 5.0. It is being printed out with 10 decimal, so it is now a float number. And also the number 3.14, which was originally a float number, is now being printed out only 3. So we converted it into an integer. How? Using this int function. So we put the 3.14 number in the parentheses of integer function, and it is going to basically removes the decimal part and only keep this part, which is going to be an integer in the output. So in this video, we reviewed how we can have a type conversion. We could also have, for example, x equals 5.45 and then print, and in this part we could have, for example, int and x. So x is a variable equals 5.45, so it's a float variable. Okay, so it's a float variable, and now I'm going to convert it to an integer. How? I'm printing out the value of variable x that is converted to an integer. So I'm having a print keyword and then 2 parentheses, and within the parentheses I'm having the int function and 1 parenthesis, and in the parentheses of int I'm having the name of the variable x. So when I run this code now, we see that 5 is being printed out. Why? Because it was originally a float number, 5.45, and this decimal part is being removed and only this integer part is being kept. So in the output we are having the number 5 here. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to another lecture. In today's video we are going to learn how to read information from the user through the terminal. So here I'm firstly initializing, I'm declaring one variable called integer value, and basically I'm assigning this to my variable. But what is this line? So using the input function, let me have the comment here. Using input function, I'm getting the input from the user. Okay, so using this function, this keyword that is reserved in Python, we can get input from the user. And by default, it is a string. When we get it from the user, by default, we get something as a string. And then I'm having my int parentheses. It is going to convert the string into an integer value. So given this explanation, I'm assigning the integer value that is declared here one input, and in the input and in the first parenthesis, in this part, you see the message saying that enter an integer. And then the user is going to enter a number, and that number is going to be stored firstly as a string because this is a default by Python. And using the int function, I'm going to convert that string into a number. So let me run the code first before giving you another example, so it would be more tangible, I think, for you. So when I run this code, this message is shown in the terminal. Enter an integer. Exactly this message is being shown here. As you see, the program is ongoing because it is waiting for me to enter something, okay? So integer value, and you see this green point here, it says that the program is in this line. So integer value variable is declared here, and the value that is going to be assigned to this variable is the following. We are asking the user to enter an integer that is shown in the terminal, and whatever that I enter here is going to be stored as one string by default. And then using this int function, which I explained here, I'm going to convert that string into an integer. So let me type down. So when I type down 40, it is going to print you entered the integer and then 40. Why? Because I'm having a print function here also, and I'm having this message for the first part separated by a comma from the second part. So in the first part, I'm showing the message you entered the integer, so you entered the integer. And in the second part, I'm having the name of my variable integer underline or underscore value, which is here. Okay, so using the input, I'm getting some information from the user, and because it is by default a string and I want it to be an integer because I would like to read an integer from the user, I'm converting that string to integer using this int function. Okay, so the second example here is the following. So I'm having another variable called float value, and I'm going to show the message enter a float using the input again function. Okay, and then whatever, as you know, whatever that is entered by the user is by default defined to be a string. It is a rule of Python. Okay, and using the float function, I'm going to convert that string that is stored from the user into a float variable, and that is going to be assigned to this float value variable. Okay, so firstly I am getting the input from the user, then since it is by default stored as a string, I need to convert it to a float because I am looking for a float. If I was looking for an integer, I was going to convert it to an integer. Okay, so and then the entered value is converted to a float number, and that is going to be assigned to float value variable. Okay, so we are going to get an input from the user, and then I'm going to convert it to a float, and then I'm going to have that float number in the final stage being assigned to my variable, and this variable name is float value. It could be x, it could be y, it could be anything. So let me type down simply x here. Okay, it is x. So x equals this, and then I'm printing out using the print function keyword. I'm printing out you entered the float and a comma and then x. So when I run this code now, it asks me for an integer. I enter 12 and it says you entered the integer 12. Okay, and now it is asking enter a float. I'm saying 3.16, and it is mentioning that you entered the float 3.16. So in this video, we learned that we need to use the input function to get some information from the user, to show the message to the user and store it. And it is by default stored as a string. If we want to have an integer, we need to convert it to an integer. If we want to have a float, we need to convert it to a float, because by default it is a string. In order to convert it to an integer, we use the int and parentheses, and within parentheses we put whatever we want, which is the input in this case from the user. And we have if we want to convert it to a float, we are going to use this float function parentheses. So for example, I can have int and input. So this is how this is going to work. Int and these two parentheses, and then input with the corresponding parentheses. In the input, I'm going to show, for example, write codes saying that enter an integer for me. Okay. And then the user is going to enter something. It is stored in this part using this input function, and whatever that is stored, because it is in the parentheses of int function, because we're having one int keyword here and one parenthesis in the left and one parenthesis in the right. So whatever that is inside it, it is going to be converted from the string that is by default to an integer. The same rule goes with the float. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. In this video, we are going to talk about modulus operator. To do that, we are having this sign here. So if we are going to calculate the remainder when one number is divided by another. So modulus operator is going to gives us and finds us the remainder of a division of one variable by another variable. So let me give you an example. For example, here I'm saying that the remainder of 10 divided by 3. And then I'm using this modulus operator here. So when 10 is divided by 3, the remainder is going to be calculated using this operator, and we expect to see the output 1, because if you do the division, you see the remainder will be 1. However, the output of the division of 10 divided by 3 is calculated like this. So we are going to have 10/3. I'm going to repeat. If you're going to calculate the remainder of 10 divided by 3, it is going to be handled by modulus operator. But if you want to know the output of when 10 is divided by 3, you're going to use the slash sign here. Okay, another example is here. So x equals 20, y is 10. I'm having this x modulus y or x modula y. So their result is being assigned to z. Basically, this part of the code is going to do the following. So x is divided by y, and their remainder is going to be calculated using this part of the code, and it is going to be assigned to z. And here we are printing out the remainder of x divided by y is z. So z is going to be printed out here. And we are having the output of division of x by y is going to be assigned to h, and h is going to be printed out here. So when I run the code, we see the remainder of 10 divided by 3 is 1, which is this part. Okay, if you do the calculation, you will see that the remainder is 1. So when 10 is divided by 3, the output is this number, 3 point something, 3.33, for example. And here I'm having two variables, and if x divided by y, their remainder will be 0 because z is shown here. Okay, why? Because they are divisible. So 20 is divisible by 10, so their remainder will be 0. And finally, we are having the output of division of x by y to be assigned to h, and h is printed out here. So the output of 20 divided by 10 is 2. So basically in this video, we learned how to use modulus operator, and we distinguished the difference between modulus operator and division. So modulus operator is going to find us the remainder when one number is divided by another, but division is going to use a slash sign, and it is going to give us the output when one number is divided by another. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we are going to work with floor division. So floor division is going to round down to the nearest whole number. For example, when I have 10 divided by 3 and using the floor division, the output is 3. However, if I have the print 10 divided by 3, we see the output and it is 3.33, for example. Okay, so to do the division, we are going to use the slash sign, but if we want to have floor division, we are going to have slash slash, so double slashes. Basically, this floor division is going to round down to the nearest whole number, to the nearest integer value. So you see that 10 is divided by 3 is 3.33. So it is 3.33, and it is rounded down to 3 now because we see the output here. Okay, so in order to give you another example, we could have like 11, and we could have, for example, I don't know, for example 3, and we could have the output x divided by y, and then print the x floor division by y. So if I have this, they're having the same value. I wanted to have another number, but it's okay. So let me have it like 20, like 3. Okay, so x is 23, y is 3. So when I print the x divided by y, we are having the number 7.66. However, when I have the floor division of x by y, I'm having the number 7. Basically, the floor division is shown by slash slash, as you see here, or as you see here, and it is going to round down the output of the division to the nearest integer value. Okay, round down. This is why even 7.66 is rounded down to 7. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. In this video, we are going to talk about arithmetic operators. So we are going to discuss addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. In order to do that, we can have the print keyword, and in the parentheses, we can have the numbers, for example, 5 plus 3 or 10 divided by 4. I run the code now. We see the output 5 plus 3, the output is 8. And we are having 10 divided by 4, the output is 2.5. We could also have this message being shown. So for example, sum of 5 and 3 is this message being shown out, and we could also have the division of 10 by 4 is. So if I have this message, it's more clear in the output to understand the 8 came from where. Okay, the sum of 5 and 3 is 8. The division of 10 by 4 is 2.5. Okay, and another way to have these is like this. So x equals 10, for example, y equals 4. Let me just choose another number. So y equals 4. Now I could have, for example, z equals x plus y, h equals x minus y, for example. We could have, for example, q equals x multiplied by y, and w equals x divided by y. And then I could print out their values. So let me use this keyword. So I can have this. The first one is z, then h, q, and w. And I could have the message, the sum of x and y. I could have this sorry, I forgot the code. The subtraction of x and y, the multiplication of x and y, and we could have it here, the division of x and y. So let me explain what I did here. So what previously we were printing out the sum directly using the numbers, but I would like to use variables in the print out keyword function. So for example, variable z, print variable z, h, q, or w. To do that, I'm declaring x and y. X equals 10, 20, and y equals 5. I'm having z equals x plus y. So 20 plus 5 is going to be assigned to z. We expect it to be 25. And then I'm having x minus y is assigned to a variable named h. So 20 minus 5, we expect it would be 15, and x multiplied by y, its value is assigned to q, and we expect to see 100 here, and also x divided by 5, the output we expect it to be 4, is assigned to w. And we are going to print the sum of x and y, and we are going to print x, which is this part. Then the subtraction of x and y, which is this part, we're going to print h. We're going to print q to be the multiplication of x and y, and w to be x divided by y. So when I run this code, so let me print out, let me comment this part so we don't see them in the output. So we are having the sum of x and y, 25, which we expected here. The subtraction of x and y, which is 15, 15 is here. The multiplication of x and y is 100. And then the division of x and y, 4. So we see that here we could do some arithmetic operations using variables and direct numbers here. So this is basically how we do mathematical operations in Python. And it's a very good example, I think, for you to start coding as of these videos that we just started, because it would be nice to start coding and get used to the syntaxes and start to see if you're making any mistakes or not. And if you're making any mistakes, check your code with the code that I'm providing for you, and you will understand where the error comes from, and then you can improve from there. So I would suggest you to start coding right away so you get used to all the syntaxes. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. In this section, we're going to talk about Boolean data types in Python. So a Boolean is a data type that represents one of two values, either true or false. And these values are often used in decision making, logical comparison, and control flow. And in Python, Booleans are case sensitive. It means that when we would like to write them down, we need to use an uppercase first letter. For example, we don't have to write them like this. It's not correct. You see, these examples are not correct. If we want to write down true, we should write it with an uppercase first letter like this. Okay, so let me illustrate it with an example. Here I'm initializing one variable called is sunny and I'm assigning true to it. And I'm having is raining and I'm assigning the false assigned to it. So when I compile this code, I'm going to see two variables being printed in the output in the terminal. So the first one is this print that we are printing out the is sunny variable, and the second one is that we are printing out the is raining variable. So because is sunny equals true and is raining equals false, I would expect to see one true and one false in the output when I run the code. So let me just compile. So it is compiling. Okay, we see now one true and one false. So basically, we are assigning Boolean data types to these two variables. The first one is true and the second one is false. And we are simply printing out the values that are assigned to these two variables. In the next lectures, we are going to do some coding exercises using these Boolean data types to understand how they can help us to have a control flow, logical comparison, or decision making. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to this lecture. In this video, we're going to talk about Boolean expressions. So Boolean expressions evaluate to true or false. So these expressions include equal sign, not equal sign, lower than, larger than, lower than or equal to, and larger than or equal to. Using these logical operators, we can have some output when comparing, for example, two numbers. For example, here I'm having a print keyword in Python, and in the parentheses, I'm checking if 5 is larger than 3. So if this equation is correct, it is going to print out true for us. And in this case, it is correct. So we expect to see a true in the output. And we are printing out 10 equals 20. This is not correct. Mathematically speaking, this is not correct. So we expect to see false in the output. And 7 is lower than or equal to 7. And this is also true mathematically speaking. Therefore, we expect to see true in the output. So let me first run this code by commenting these lines. So we are going to talk about these three first. So here I see true, false, and true. The first one, 5 is larger than 3. This is true. So we're having the true in the output. 10 equals 20. It is false because it doesn't make sense. And 7 is lower than or equal to 7. And it is true as well. So we're having the true being printed out in the output. So this is how comparison works in using Boolean expressions. And these are the signs. I'm going to repeat them one more time. So this is the sign for equal. So we are checking to see 10 equals 20 or not equal, lower than, larger than, lower than or equal to, larger than or equal to. Moreover, we are going to discuss logical operators. So we are having and, or, and not. So let me comment these 3 lines and uncomment these 3 lines. So I am having the logical operators true and false. So if true and false are together and we are using and logical operator, the output should be and must be false, let's say. If there is an or, the output is true, and when we are saying not true, the output is the opposite, so it is false. So when we are having one true and one false, and we are using the and logical operator here, the answer is always false if we are having one false in the output. Let me illustrate it with another example. So here, if I have true and true, the output is true. If I have false and false, the output is false. So let me comment these 2 lines so we can compare these 3 first. So when we are having at least one false when using and logical operator, the output is false. When both of them are true, the output is true. And when both of them are false, the output is obviously false. Okay? So, sorry, false. Okay? So this is how the AND logical operator is going to work. And even if the false is first and then we are having the true, here the output is again false because we are still having one false here. Okay, so let me run. Okay, so when we are using AND logical operator, if we at least have one false, the output is for sure false. If both of them are false, like this case, the output is false. And if both of them are true, the output is true. So the only possible option that the output is true is when we are having 2 truths using AND operator and logical operators. Okay, this is how logical operator is going to work using AND. Okay, so let me now comment these lines and talk about this line. So using OR operator, we are saying that if this one is true or the other one, okay? In this case, when at least one of them is true, the output is true. So if I run, you see true in the output. So for other cases, if I have true or true, print false or false. So let me run this code. So here I'm saying true or false, the output is true. True or true, the output is true. False or true, the output is true. And false or false, the output is false. So using OR operator, logical operator, if we have at least one true, the output is true. And if both of them are false, the output is false. Because we are checking to see if we are having at least one true when using OR operator. So either this or that must be true. If either of them is true, the output is true. But if both of them are false, the output is false. Okay. And finally, we are having the not logical operator. When I'm having true and before true I'm having not, it is going to return the opposite output for me. So the opposite of true is false. So when I run the code, we see false in the output. So this is a bit abstract for now the logical operators. You may understand the context, but you may not see how it may be useful for the moment if you have no background in programming. But later on in the very same course, in the section where we are going to talk about if conditions, if and else and elif conditions, we are going to use these logical operators practically, and in practice and examples, coding exercises, you will see how practical they are. And you will understand their usage better, much better in that section. But this is just an introduction for you to understand what logical operators are. So we learned that there is and, there is or, and there is not. These are three logical operators that we are going to use. This is just an introduction, and in the section that we are going to talk about if conditions, we're going to use them practically in coding exercises. So I expect that there you will understand everything about logical operators. If you're not sure yet about the things that I told you about logical operators, don't worry. This is just an example here, just to give you a little bit of thoughts about these logical operators, and we're going to see them in practice later on this course. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to another lecture. In today's video, we would like to write a program that assigns true or false to a variable and prints it. To do that, we learned how to declare a variable. So here I'm declaring a variable is underscore student, and I'm assigning true to it, okay? And I'm basically printing out this variable using the print keyword. So let me run the code. So when I run the code, I see true in the output. I could have, for example, uh, is young equal false. And now here I am assigning a variable that is called, I'm declaring a variable that is called is young, and I'm assigning false to is young, meaning that it's not young, for example, or the person is not young. And using the print keyword, I'm printing out this variable. This could be y, this could be x, for example, this could be x. It's just the name that we give to our variable. So when I run the code, it's false. We see how we can declare and initialize a variable and assign true or false to it and print its value in the terminal in the output. This is how we can start working with booleans in Python. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to another coding exercise session. We're going to write a program that compares two numbers and prints whether the first number is greater than the second one. In order to do that, I'm initializing and declaring and initializing two variables called num1 and num2. I'm assigning 10 and 5 to them respectively. And in the output, I'm using the print keyword and I'm checking to see if the first number is greater than the second one using this comparison operator. So the first one is 10 and the second one is 5. So it means that 10 is larger than 5. Is it correct? Yes. Therefore, it is going to print true in the output. Okay. But if I have number 1 equal to 1, we expect to see the output to be false, as you see here. So this is how logical comparison operators is going to work for Booleans expressions. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome back. We would like to write a program that uses logical operators to combine two Boolean values and print the result. To do that, I'm declaring and initializing two variables. The first one is weekend, and true is assigned to is weekend, so it means that it is during the weekend. And I'm having the has homework to be false. So, for example, one student is in the weekend because it's true and has no homework to do. Okay. So we are going to use and or, I mean, this and or logical operators as the program wants to combine two Boolean values and print the result. Okay, so I'm printing out the result and I'm using logical operators. So when I'm having one true and one false, we learned that if we are using and logical operator and at least one of them is false, the output is for sure false. So the output is false. And when I'm comparing a true and a false using or logical operator, if at least one true is there, the output is true. Okay? So when I run the code, I expect to see false for the first one and I expect to see true for the second one. I'm going to repeat one more time. So if we are using and logical operator and comparing one true and false, if at least one of them is false, the output is false. And when comparing and using or logical operator, if at least one of them is true, the output is true. If it is still abstract, the context for you, don't worry. It is normal. We are going to see practical examples of this to be more clear for you in sections that we are going to talk about if conditions. Please wait until then. This is just an introduction for you to know what logical operators are in general. Okay? So don't worry, it is normal. This is just to set the ground as an introduction. Then when I'm talking about if conditions, I'm not only I'm going to review these concepts, but also I'm going to provide you with practical examples so you see how how they work and what is the logic behind them. Thank you for watching. Wait until then. Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to talk about truthy and falsy values. So in Python, non-Boolean values can be treated as Booleans in certain contexts. For example, truthy values that evaluates to true. They are, for example, non-zero numbers or non-empty strings. On the other side, values that evaluate to false are zero or none or empty, for example, strings. If I want to illustrate an example, we can use the bool keyword and the parentheses. In the parentheses, I can type down non-zero numbers as I mentioned here. So a non-zero number would be treated as a truthy value. So if I type down 1, for example, it is a truthy value. So on the other side, if I type down bool and in the parentheses I put 0, which is this example here, we see that it's a falsy value. Also, if I have any string that is not an empty one, for example, I'm having bool and in the parentheses I would have Reza Shahin, for example. Okay, so this is considered to be one truthy value. But if I have a bool that contains an empty string, it is going to be considered as a falsy value. Okay, this is how non-Boolean values can be treated in certain contexts as Booleans in Python. So to illustrate this example, I'm going to print these examples. How to do that? We just put them in print parentheses. Okay, we use the print keyword and then the parentheses. So in the parentheses, I'm having bool and number 1. I expect to see true because it's a truthy value. Why it is a truthy value? Because it's a non-zero number and this is considered to be truthy value. And for this example that we're considering number 0, we expect to see false. Why? Because in the falsy value, we expect to see number 0. Here we have it. And in this example that we are having bool and the hello string in the quotes, I expect to see true in the output. Why? Because it's a non-empty string and it is considered to be truthy value, so it is going to print out true for us, and it's an empty string, so we expect to be falsy value. We expect to see false in the output because an empty string, as I showed here in an example, is a falsy value. So when I run the code, we see this one, number 1 is true. When we're running with 0, it is false. When we are having a non-empty string, it is true, and an empty string is false. Therefore, in this video, we learned about truthy and falsy values and how non-Boolean values can be treated as Booleans in certain contexts. We are going to discuss these types of non-Boolean values later on in the following sections in coding exercises. And I'm just providing the introductions to them. So later on, when I'm going to review them first and then provide you coding exercises and examples, you have some clear idea that what these things are. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, welcome to this section. In this section, we're going to talk about strings. As previously mentioned, a string is a sequence of characters enclosed in either single quotes or double quotes. And by single quotes, I mean this one, this sign, okay? And double quotes, I mean this sign, okay? And strings are one of the most commonly used data types in Python. And for the strings, both single and double quotes can be used to define strings. So it's optional. We can just choose whatever that we want. And to include quotes inside a string, we can alternate the type of quotes or use escape sequence. Let me illustrate it with an example. Here I'm initializing a variable called name, and using a single quote, I'm assigning Alice to this name, and I'm printing out name using the print keyword in Python. Okay, and here I'm having the greeting variable, and I'm printing greeting using the print keyword. However, I'm using double quotes here. As you see, I'm using double quotes here, and in the output, as we will see in a few minutes, there is no difference between single quotes or double quotes. So it's totally optional. You can either use this or this, okay? But what if you want to include quotes inside a string? To do that, for example, I'm having a variable being initialized here called quote, and I'm printing out the quote here using this line. However, I'm having a single quote for the string itself. As you see, I start from in here, and this single quote ends here. And I'm having she said, comma, and I'm having quotes inside of a string, saying that Python is amazing. Okay, so if I run the code, I will explain further other examples, but let me first run the code to show you the difference. So let me also comment these parts. So if I run, we see that in the output we have Alice, hello world. So Alice was declared and initialized using single quotes, and hello world was initialized using double quotes. So you see no difference in the output. They're both the same, so it's up to you. And when I mean to include quotes inside a string, I mean this. So we are printing out she said, comma, Python is amazing. So it's like a direct speech. So if we are going to have quotes sign here in a string, so this is our string and we are having the quotes here, okay? We can alternate the type of the code. So because here I was using the single quote to initialize my string, then in order to include quotes in the string, like Python is amazing to include that, I'm using double quotes. Okay, so you can alternate the type of the quotes. If you're initializing your string using a single quote, you can use double quotes when discussing a quotes in the string. Or if you're declaring and initializing your string using double quotes and you want to include quotes inside your string, you can use single quotes. Okay, so it's vice versa. After that, another way to do that, because we mentioned that either we can alternate the type of the code or use escape sequence. To do that, we can have, for example, she said, and have backslash before the start of the code and after the start of the code, and we have backslash code sign and backslash code sign again here. So backslash code sign and backslash code sign, and inside that we provide our codes. Okay, so when I run this code, we see exactly the same output for this line, for this code, and escape codes in the output. Okay, you see there is no difference. So it's up to you again. So you can alternate the type of codes or use escape sequence. So in this lesson, first of all, we reviewed the concept of strings. Then we mentioned that we can declare and initialize strings using single quotes or double quotes. It's up to us. And if we want to include quotes inside a string, as I'm showing here, okay, inside a string, you can either, there are two ways. You can either alternate the type of quotes or use escape sequence. In order to alternate the type of quotes, if you're using already single quotes to declare your string, for the quotes you need to use double quotes. If you're initializing your string using double quotes, for the quotes inside your string, you need to have single quotes. Okay, or you can use escape sequence. To do that, you're going to use backslash code and backslash code before the start of the code and at the end of the code. So you see the output, they're both the same, so it depends what you prefer. Thank you for watching.